Has your landlord increased your rent yet? By how much? Does he have the right to do that?
In the case where the landlord intends to increase his rent, he shall notify the tenant in writing. You don't just increase rent unilaterally. You will inform the tenant that, yes, I want to increase the rent to X amount of money.
Is there room for negotiation for how much?
Definitely.
So what's the time frame in which the landlord has to express the interest to increase rent? What's the amount of time that a tenant has to have to get ready for this?
The tenant is entitled to sufficient time, at least 6 months. If eventually he issues it within 2 months before the expiration of it, that means if you're paying for the next year, you can pay him 1 year of the old rent.
This is straight to the point, and we are talking about rent increase. A lot of you are experiencing a hike in your rent. Your landlords are talking to you right now, especially with the way things are in the country. You can go to the comment section and tell us a bit about your experiences, especially if this is happening to you at this time. So, should you always have a tenancy agreement every time you get into a contract with a landlord to, live in his premises? And in what form should this tenancy agreement come? I have a lot of questions on this in this line, but let's start with just that. The tenancy agreement, must you have it, and in what way, in what form should that tenancy agreement come?
I believe it's, in my own opinion, it's very, very, very necessary for you to have a tenancy agreement.
You must request it.
Reduced to writing. The terms of agreement clearly specified, because it is actually that tenancy agreement that regulates the relationship, that contains the terms of agreement with which you're staying in that house.
So you must request it.
It's not a must per se. It's if you decide to have, after all, there are two types of contract. You have the oral agreement and the written agreement. You understand? In some cases, you see landlords wherein they gave out a house without a written agreement. In most cases, if such matters come, you determine what could be the possible term from the conduct of the parties or the way the tenant has been paying. Okay. If the tenant is paying every year, that means it's a yearly tenant. You understand? If he's paying weekly, it's a weekly tenant. So it is very, very necessary to ensure that you demand that tenancy agreement in writing. And not only that, you both parties must sign it. You sign it and the landlord signs his part. Like as the white man will always say that the faintest brain is better than the sharpest memory. It is imperative you do so, because sometimes you may live in a house for 10 years. How do you remember the terms of the agreement? Safe not for the tenancy agreement. It is that document that you still, yes, these are the things. You refresh your memory on that.
So is it supposed to happen yearly? I'll give you a reason for asking that question. When I moved into my apartment, my landlord gave me a tenancy agreement, one at the beginning. The next year, I asked for a tenancy agreement, and he said the previous one should suffice. So, and I was a bit confused about that. So can one tenancy agreement at the beginning of the contract cover for all the number of years that you're going to live there? Or are you supposed to have a fresh tenancy agreement every time you pay your rent?
Primarily, what I would tell you is that first tenancy agreement suffices.
Oh.
Depending on the way it is couched. In most cases, you only see one tenancy agreement. Why I said is depending on the way it's couched is that in tenancy agreement, there are some tenancy agreements you will see. The way it will be couched, it will be for a fixed time certain. That means what it means is that at the end of the expiration of that agreement, you are required to leave.
Okay.
You understand? Unless you people renegotiate and, continue.
Is that fixed term? Does it have anything to do with the date? Because, tenancy agreements have dates from this date to that date. Is that the fixed time certain?
Yes. Now, within a period of that 1 year of that tenancy.
That means now by the next day, you should give me a new one.
That is, if it is for the agreement is for a fixed time certain. And you people, towards the end of your tenancy, have agreed that you can continue to stay. You understand? And what that fixed time certain does is that it waives that statutory provision that you must issue a quit notice. In that case, when the agreement is for a fixed time, you can waive issuing the quit notice and issue the 7 days owner's intention to recover possession.
Back up a little bit. Let us speak English now. Okay, so I have a tenancy agreement. I'll use myself as an example. Let's say I have a tenancy agreement that says, your rent starts 1st of January and terminates 31st of December. That means by 31st of December, when I want to
For
pay
you
my-
to continue to stay
Yes.
in such an agreement, you ought to have renegotiated staying there.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, the landlord, let's say on the 1st of December says, you know what, I don't want you to be here anymore. Based on this tenancy agreement, can he just give me a quit notice that would not require
What
additional 6
happens
months?
is that when you people even have that sort of agreement, it is believed that you are required to stay there and leave.
Okay. So it's defined.
It's defined.
So what about the situations where you hear a tenant will hold a landlord in court for 2 years and not pay rent? What could the landlord have done wrong? Because I've seen those situations where you will keep going to court 2 years, tenant has not paid rent, and the landlord will have no other option but to sell the house just to get rid of the tenant. What could the landlord have done to have incurred such?
Sometimes it is, the courts, the process of the court has a lot to do in this regard. The process has a lot to do in this regard. Maybe it could have been that if you check such matters, maybe at some point there was one problem or the other, or that the presiding officer was sick, or all those things happen. Or a case of wherein the judiciary is understaffed. And when you come into court, sometimes you have 15 matters, 13 matters in the cost list. You understand? And those things constitute reasons why you see most long adjournments. The diary of the court may be full. Then you get 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months. That's why those things take a long time sometimes. And this is litigation. At some point, you might even be litigating a matter. Getting to the judgment period, the presiding officer may die.
I'm sorry, I
And if the judge dies, that means the whole matter starts all over again.
Wow.
So if you're talking about that area, it's a combination of a lot of factors, which is not limited to one.
So what does the landlord do in this case?
He has to be patient until the court determines.
Can he sell the house?
It is his house now, he can sell it.
And
but
then
he has to disclose to the prospective buyer. See, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, because I see situations where landlords are trapped or held in court. And it takes forever. And they decide to sell the property. And the new owner will come in and say, look, I'm no longer your landlord. Oh, yeah.
He will still continue with the process of evicting.
Really?
Yes, he will still continue. Nobody has the right to throw your things out from the front. But that doesn't mean that as a tenant, you have to abuse it.
No, I'm aware. I'm aware of this. But you are saying that if a person buys a house where the tenant and the landlord are in court, when he takes over possession of that house, everything is not anew. He still has to go back to court and finish what the landlord started with the tenant.
He has to. The process has to. Even if there's nothing he can do about it.
So it's very important that
He cannot. The fact is that he cannot go inside of the house and throw his things away from the house.
Interesting. So that means, as a person, if you're trying to buy a house, you really need to find out if the tenant and the landlord, if the landlord has issues with the tenant. If not, you could buy a house that's encumbered.
It shouldn't be a problem in terms of if the buyer wants to buy a house, because the property is still free from all encumbrances. It's not as if the property itself is not owned by the landlord.
But you still have somebody there.
These are just little issues that at some point litigation will always come to an end. And one thing you have to equally understand is that in the contemporary Abuja now, I will talk about Abuja because this is where I am. I don't think that there is any recovery of premises that can stay more than 6 months. Because the courts, they don't even do, you just get 2 weeks adjournment. You understand? So at worst, you get 3 weeks because they're always mindful of the fact that time is of the essence and the landlord wants to repossess his property.
All right, to wrap this up, let's talk about scenarios where landlords bring in security agencies to either harass tenants or to evict them. What does the law say about that? Because we see it all the time. When the landlord gets frustrated, probably with the court process, they'll call police officers, they'll call security agencies, and we see what we see on social media. What does the law say about that? And how can this be mitigated?
Well, the society we live in, that is the way it is. In practice, you see a lot of landlord, once the tenant is no longer paying, they take the laws into their hands. There is one experience I want to tell you. I had a client in Warimpa who, was staying in a particular house. But the agreement is still an oral agreement. That one was an oral agreement. However, the agent was the one that rented that house to the occupant and was collecting money. Whether the money gets to the landlord or not is what I cannot categorically tell you. So when they came, the guy negotiated and negotiated, it didn't work. They now went to the house. The landlord went to the house, took some boys to that house. This one is not even law enforcement agency. They broke the door, broke the windows, broke everywhere. When the guy came in, he called me. I wrote a petition. Immediately I wrote the petition, the owner of that house ran away. I wrote a petition to the area commander in Maitama, and I compliment the area commander for the work he did that period. The owner of that house ran away. He later paid some money to the tenant and came back and he fixed the building.
Interesting.
So what's good about it is that there is nothing you can, it's just patience, because when you take the laws into your hand, it turns against you.
All right. Thank you so much,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Nwachukwu, for taking our time to talk to us on these matters. Now, if you have a whole lot of other questions, please put them on the comment section and we will send them to him and continue to have this conversation on the comment section. This is a serious matter because we keep getting messages about landlord and tenants matter. This has been Straight to the Point. My name is Gloria OJ Emodi. Till next time.